Alright you guys, welcome to DevLife, and today I want to talk about management and software development and how they relate to each other and what you can learn from programming and take that into management. So recently I actually got a promotion and now I have a few people actually working under me, and I'm looking to add some new people to the team. So I'm starting to try and realize that I need to up my management game a little bit. I have a little bit of experience that I've done a little bit with contract workers here and there and a few things like that. But in general, I don't have a ton of experience with this. This is obviously a new step for me. This is me moving forward. And so I have to figure out how I can do this new task very well as maintaining my programming and all of that. So I'm starting to think nowadays, like what is the best way that I can do this? What are some tools, and things that I can learn from software? Because when I think about it, I think, what am I really good at? I'm really good at writing software, right? That's why I'm in the position that I'm in now. So given that I'm really good at software, what do I learn? What do I know from software? So when I think about that, there's a few things that come to mind. So when I think about programming, there's several ways that you can do things, right? You could open up a text file, you could write, the intro to your program, and you could make a big function and just kind of manipulate all of your variables and do everything that you need to do and just do the entire application in there and get the output that you want, right? But there's a problem with that, and that's that if you need to edit the program later, or you want to expand the functionality of your program, right? You want to reuse some of the code that you've used, you have to copy paste because you didn't make things into functions, you didn't split things out, you didn't follow best practices, right? So on the, there's kind of that terrible beginner way that you do things, and then on the complete other end of the spectrum, there is kind of the full-blown software architect method, right? Where you design everything out, you diagram it, you explain it, at a high level. You say, this is what I want this piece to do, this is what I want this piece to do, this is how they will interface, and then you actually go through and make everything with best practices, right? You split out everything that you can into small functional pure blocks of code. You basically interface everything together. You would actually do some research on what technology, frameworks, tools, libraries, that kind of thing you would actually want to integrate. You get all of that together, and then you would make your actual software application, and it would take you probably 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 times as long as a tiny, as if you just open a document and manipulated your variables to do what they want. So the question is, why do that versus just doing it the quicker way? And that's future gains, right? Later on, when you need to edit something, you edit, a very small piece of the code because everything is segmented and put into small pure functions, right? So that gives you a lot of benefit later on. And so then later, if you need to make a new function, you go, okay, well, I already actually have part A, B, C, and D already completed with other functions. So all I need to make is part E. So then that's really easy, right? You link up those 4 functions that you've already done, add your new bit of logic, and you have a new, functional system. You have your new functionality that you wanted, but it took you seconds, minutes maybe, versus hours, because you don't have to go copy paste, you don't have to recreate the wheel. You already have all of these things done. And so when I'm thinking about management and how I can apply some of those same tools, I start to think that there's a lot of crossover there. So there's kind of 2 different ways that you can do management, right? Like right now with the job interviews, right? You can kind of just keep a mental map, right? Like, oh, I kind of like that guy. Oh, that guy was really, he was kind of weird, but he was smart on the technical side, right? Or there might be people who are great on the resume, great on paper, they do great code tests, but they're just terrible at interviewing. And so why is that, right? And so what I started doing is, rather than just keeping a mental map like a lot of people might do, I'm getting incredibly organized. I'm trying to apply what I would think would be best practices from software development to interviewing and to this whole process and to management. And so I think to myself, okay, so I'm gonna have this interview. I could just have the interview and jot down a few notes, about the person and how I felt, or I could get really, really technical and really, really break things out. And so that's what I've done. So I have my interview questions and I ask them, and whether they answer completely correctly or terribly, I score them on a 0 to 5, right? It's not a deal breaker if they get some 0s or some 1s, right? I'm just writing down at the time, based on what I know and what they know. When they answer that question, how do I think they knew? Did they kind of know it, like a 3, or did they absolutely nail it, 5, right? And then I'll write some notes in there as well about each individual question. So that's a lot more work on my part. I have to do a lot more mental gymnastics to not only keep track of what he's saying, but also jot it down. So I go through the whole process, and then the interview's over, right? But the benefit to that is that later on, not just later on in the hiring process, but later on even after we've hired them, or years later after they've been a great employee for a long time, I can look back at this information and I can find out details about this that might help inform future decisions. So I might, think that person X, Y, or Z is way better, but then I look back at the code and I look back at the interviews and I see, oh, well, actually, the real difference between these two is only in these few questions, and I know from future interviews that this person actually understands this concept very well, and they were just probably flustered in the first interview. So maybe after all, this second person who may be cheaper is a way better option, right? And so you learn a lot of information, and then later on down the road when you're actually managing this person, you can still take that information and use it to your advantage, right? That you might have someone who has a hard time staying on topic, but when they are on topic, they crush it, right? So you as a manager, might have flushed that out during the interview process. And if you did, you can then, make sure that you put in organizational tools to help that person thrive in their position. Whereas if you didn't know that, right, like you didn't flesh that out during the interview, you can look back and say, okay, what's wrong with my interview process? What did I miss? What question should have fleshed this out? And if not, you can add to it or you can modify it to get to those answers. But that's what I mean when I'm talking about best practices. There's a lot of different ways that you can stay organized. There's a lot of different ways that you can manage people. But I think that recording things, having lots of different split out individual pieces and kind of, best practices from software really translate into management, because I think that you can look back on things and say, okay, how can this help me now? Reuse the information that you already have. Don't rewrite history. Just like when you're programming, you don't want to rewrite the same function over and over and over again to do the same thing. You want to write it once and use it several times. Same thing with software development and managing, right? You want to hire an employee once, get down, say for example, a training system, right? You want to figure out a great way to onboard people, a great way to do XYZ, and if you document that whole process, what were some struggles, what were some things that were really easy and awesome, you can refine that and make it better. And then eventually, over time, you can reuse those things that you learned, not just mentally, but you can actually have, physical documented evidence say, this is the better way to do this. This is why we've learned by hiring, 5 people that this onboarding process is a lot easier and a lot better than the alternative. And it just makes you a better manager and a better, employee overall. So that's my video. I hope it kind of made sense. It was kind of just me thinking about different ways that software and programming relate to my new job as in a more managerial role. So hope you guys liked the video. If you guys have any comments, questions, concerns, anything at all, leave them in the comment section down below. Or if you want, you can join the Discord server with me and Josh, and you can ask us any question anytime, and we'll try and get back to you. But anyways, hope you guys liked the video. Later.